Good evening from the Second Age of Reason. This is probably my first video of the year 2014, and we're going to go over the topic of the court's ruling on NSA surveillance. And I thought I would just mention a few things and see where it's at, where you're at, and how much we know and will maybe know. At this point, in the past, earlier this year, the ACLU had a court case, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court regarding surveillance. And basically, it was based on their suspicions and what they thought was in existence. They didn't really have perfectly hard evidence or anything. So the courts threw them out, saying that they had no basis for those suspicions. So basically saying that if you can't prove it, you have no complaint. So that happened. In the meantime, Edward Snowden came out with his revelations, and a lot of those suspicions that they were talking about earlier proved to be true, and probably even far greater than ever before thought. So somebody else further down the line had another court case going, and a federal judge had looked at it and was surprised by the scope and depth of it, and had said it was nearly, if not Orwellian, or even beyond Orwellian in its scope and depth. So they said it probably would be unconstitutional based on that finding. And everybody was like, yeah, that's what we thought. Well, I don't know if it was the same case that was appealed or another case, and maybe it was worded differently. But it was recently ruled on, I think in December of 2013, the end of 2013. And the judge ruled that it is lawful because of, existing laws or history or examples or whatever. It didn't seem to have as good of a grounding in logic and evidence. And that means that the next level will be the Supreme Court. Now, in order to get something into the Supreme Court, you better have your ducks in a row. I mean, there's a number of things you have to file, including something called a writ of Certiorari. That's a mouthful in itself. But basically, it's a document that says why you think the Supreme Court should hear your case. And I think they now have enough evidence to get the Supreme Court to hear the case. Then the question is, they will look at that and decide, did the previous courts have adequate rulings to address the issue, in which case they'll just brush it aside, or did they rule incorrectly, in which case they'll pick up the case and counter a judgment. And the question is which judgment, or they'll lay it out hopefully in terms of the Constitution and say, in terms of these articles of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, it's unconstitutional or it is constitutional. And hopefully they'll provide some good reasoning for that. Hopefully the court will be pretty much agreed on it. But as we've seen in recent years, especially with like Citizens United, the court is not entirely predictable. So what I have seen is they normally rule in favor of money. So they ruled in Citizens United because it meant unlimited money for elections without regulation or without traceability. So that was in favor of big money. Then there was with Obamacare, they ruled in favor of it because it means big money for insurance companies. And there was gay marriage. It means big money for other parts of supporting that institution in regards to legal and economic kind of things that add up to lots of big money. So when you look at the NSA now in terms of big money, it almost seems to go both ways. In one hand, it's industrial espionage, which I think it's mostly used for, so it means big money for some. On the other hand, recently it's been found out that because of this, because they've been weakening the security protocol so that they can have access to it, and the scope of the surveillance has made a lot of people shy about buying into new technologies. Technology industries have pretty well claimed that it's costing them income and profits. These profits are probably, I think, were estimated on the order of $180 billion. So that's in the order of money. $180 billion, which is no small amount. So I think if they view that, they will rule in favor of the Constitution because they want to preserve the money and income and profits of Silicon Valley. However, if the industrial espionage has a trump card of some sort and shows that they are getting even more money because of the surveillance, I think they'll rule in favor of allowing it. In general, they seem to side more with the empire and the system and less with the people. So I kind of think it'll go against the people, but I would still say that Silicon Valley is the wild card in that one. So I just want to leave that with you. Have you think, what do you think will happen with the surveillance cases before the Supreme Court? Do you think they'll be for it, against it? My guess, the most practical guess, is if they take the case and they hear it, they will take a couple of things into consideration. They will probably say, yes, the surveillance state, as the NSA is doing it, is unconstitutional, and it's an encroachment. However, they need it in order to maintain security, which is their job. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say the Constitution is still in effect, but basically it'll become a reference document. Your Bill of Rights will be reference documents, and for some practical purposes they may still be used, but when it comes to push or shove in the government, that is just, let's say it's considered as guidelines. I think they'll rule kind of along that line. They're not going to say that the Constitution is null and void, and they're not going to say to the NSA, you have to stop and you have to erase all your disks and stuff like that either. So I think they're going to call that their compromise, that yes, they can still collect stuff, and yes, they'll still have the Constitution, but in certain cases it's only a reference document. Well, let's see how that turns out. Once it goes to the Supreme Court, will they just shove it under the rug and say, well, it's none of our business? Will they pick it up? And then who will they rule in favor of? So please rate and comment below of what you think it'll be. And until later, we'll be seeing you.